All right, look at this picture of an Indian bride against a window, and the final score was 74. Scoring range was pretty tight, all within 5-6 points of each other. On the good side, you saw it come up multiple times. It's saleable. This is absolutely saleable work. Client would buy and love and enjoy. Posing, one of the judges found it to be pleasing and enjoyable. There's a sense of a broken wrists and the arms getting away from the body and attention to detail within those types of different things. There's a sense of storytelling here. Perhaps this is a portrait. Perhaps she's looking out upon the groom. Perhaps the barat's going on. Who knows? But there's an opportunity for a story to be told with this particular image. So now, in terms of improvement, exposure overall, the sense is that perhaps there's not enough fall off between the background and the foreground elements, and so that exposure is a little bit hot there on the right hand side of her arm, and the background is being brought up because of that. And I'd go ahead and bring the overall exposure down to bring in more detail in that, and go ahead and let the background fall off. It's okay in this particular sense because with the chains and stuff like that back there, it's less appealing. So we don't necessarily need to see that depth in particular here. Another thing that came up was emotion and refinement. And so while the posing was good, I think the answer is the hand that's by the head still feels a bit forced. You'll notice that when we talk about refinement, the bangles that are on the arm that is up by her head is falling down, and so it becomes unnatural in terms of its positioning. And so you want to work on refining things like that. Her gaze is a bit off in terms of her nose, in the plane of the nose. It doesn't quite look like it looks like there's a disconnect between where her face is looking and where her eyes are looking. And it could be refined a bit to bring those eyes back a little bit more, perhaps even just to encourage her to soften them and look downwards. And when we look at other things that are brought up here, emotion, I think that's the energy of the eyes more than it is the expression of the mouth. And enjoy the softness of the mouth. Would like to see that perhaps her belly, her hips were pushed a little bit more away from camera. Here they are being brought away from there, but it still feels like her belly is coming towards camera. Shifting her weight back would help minimize that even more, and perhaps make it easier for her to be able to have her hands together. But I'd explore different options besides bringing her hand up to the side of her head, because when we do that, we want to give a reason for it, and it just looks like it's placed currently, whereas the hand that's holding the sari looks like it has a reason. So these are things that could be done to help improve it and kind of take it to the next level, but certainly this is an image that will absolutely go in somebody's album. All right, my name's Luke Edmondson. I'm going to be doing your critique here, looking at the picture of the Indian bride as she's entering her final preparations or taking a portrait on her wedding day. And we look at the overall score here was a 71. Scoring range is pretty tight. All the judges were within about 6 points of each other. Consistently, the statement is this is saleable. In other words, if you were in professional practice and you had shot this wedding, this is a shot that they would include in their wedding album because of the fact that it's been captured on their wedding day, and it's of them and their loved ones. With that said, let's look at the areas for improvement, because I think that's the opportunity for real growth. So the term exposure comes up here. And when we think about that term exposure, you go, well, is it that the face is too hot? Or is it that the background's too dark or whatever? I think that the term exposure here has to do with your lighting ratios more than it has to do with whether or not you have highlights and you have darks, because you have both of those. But the relationship between the amount of drama between the background and the subject, it's like it's in between. It's not dark enough where we've made the background go completely black, which in a sense, the pattern on the wall is a distraction from the detail and ornateness of her attire. Because her attire is so ornate, we want to look for ways to be able to simplify the background so that we isolate the subject to be able to draw our attention to her. But in this case, we are seeing the background, but it's not toned down quite enough. So if it's not, we feel like it's competing with her and the harshness of the shadows that's on her. Now, we can talk about that in terms of lighting and mood. The light is either too small a light, and that's why we're having these harsh shadows, or it's not being softened as a light source, or it's not a reflected light source. But the quality of light that's hitting her is casting harsh shadows, and she's very feminine, and she's doing a very feminine pose. And we're not reflecting that back within the lighting. It's a very harsh type lighting. And so, because of that, there's a bit of a disconnect that's occurring. I think even the thumb that's that's on the arm that's holding the other arm, as it comes up, that becomes a bit of a visual distraction and a refinement that could be done. So all in all, the key to here is learning how to refine a scene. You have all the elements. You have a gorgeous bride who has put so much thought and attention to all these details and accoutrements. And now our job is to replicate through our knowledge, skills, and experience a way that flatters our subjects in the context of which they're being seen. And in the context here, it is something that is a portrait of a person on her wedding day, the most beautiful day of her life. And so we want to reward her for that in the way that we light her, pose her, and guide her. Thank you so much.
Hi there, this is JB Salih from Dallas, Texas, and I have the honor of critiquing your image today. I see this image scored a 71, and the title is One Day I Will Show You the World. Reminds me of a Disney song. I like it. Okay, so first couple things I notice here when I judge this image, I hashtag impact and sellable. You have a lot of impact in this image, and I think it's very sellable to this little girl's parents. They love a little action shot from their vacation on the beach. A couple things I hashtag was color and lighting for needs improvement. The color of this image has a lot of cyan in it, so I think we need to take some of that cyan out and warm it up just a bit, especially since it's on the beach. We want nice warm tones on that skin. So let's talk about a few things that we can improve to raise your score in the future, not only for this image, but for any other image you might submit or might sell to your clients. First is composition. This is nearly a bullseye composition, but it's missing it just a bit. It's missing its mark. Get it? Bullseye? I know, I'm not very funny. So if we're going to do a composition like this, let's either put it in rule of thirds in one of those 4 points, so slide her over to the right just a bit, or we could slide her to the left and do that bullseye, so it's right on point. Next thing are the distracting elements on the right-hand side of the image, lower right, lower mid area. We can easily clone that away so that there's less distraction and more attention on the subject. Next, the hair is a bit distracting. It's in her face. If we're going to set something up like this and submit it to competition, especially this competition, the best of the best in the entire world, let's perfect this a little bit better and perfect the pose and perfect our lighting. Let's have the chin a little bit more camera left so that lighting's hitting on both sides of her face. I see you used an off-camera strobe, so kudos for that. Really helps her stand out and freezes her in motion. But let's tell a story with this image. Let's not just capture the image, especially if we're going to submit this for competition, like I said. With all that said, I think you have a lot of room to improve. Just a few slight things to pay attention to can really raise your score, especially with posing and the lighting and the composition. We also want to watch our horizon line. It looks a little bit crooked to me, but it's hard to tell. Make sure that horizon line is nice and straight. And I think that's some good information to get you on your way to raising your scores in the future. I do want to thank you for submitting this to WPPI First Half Competition, and we hope to see more images from you in the near future. Take care.
Hey, this is Luke Edmonds. I'll be doing your critique today on this image of a bride in front of the building here. Some cars in the background and so forth. Final score was 67. Judging scoring ranges were pretty tight. It was all within 5 points of each other. And that's kind of how you wound up with this. On the good side, we've got things such as the word saleable, meaning that the bride would purchase a shot like this of herself. You've got a sense of mood, primarily because of the fact that it's at dusk or nighttime. There's this sense of ambiance to it. Word storytelling, there's an idea of she is in a particular place Somehow it's going to relate to the context of her wedding and so forth. But let's spend the majority of our time here talking about areas that potentially could be improved, because I think that's the goal of this particular critique. Now, things that are brought up are subjects such as lighting, refinement. Refinement is meant, in my opinion, as an overall feeling and sense. It's not just a specific thing. It's a global thing. The word improvement comes up as something that could be improved. I think that kind of goes into the refinement as a global type statement. We're going to get to lighting in a second. We're going to get to posing in a second. Post-production and retouching are coming up. That again kind of comes into some of the finishing of things. In particular, you might look at the wisp of hair that's coming across the top, the hair that's coming across her neck, for instance, is an area that could be refined. When we think about the lighting in this particular situation, it feels very flat and straight on. You may also notice when we talk about refinement, it's little details such as, notice how the necklace is not centered in relation to her bosom and the center point of her body. Notice how her neck has been turned to the point of stress in such a way that the tendons on the side are popping out. You may notice that the eyes are not following the plane of the nose. So we're seeing a lot of white to the eyes. And then in addition to that, posing wise, she feels very flat. We're shooting to the widest part of her waist. We've lost her beautiful shape. We've lost her beautiful mask of her face. And so there, if you wanted to do a profile type shot like this, it's probably better to move the light, instead of being where it is, over to the left-hand side and use it to be able to create some rim light that's coming across her, create shape and dimension. I would say that because the cars are a distraction in the background, you want to find a way to reframe, and or you want to find a way to light in such a way that those elements in the background are more softened or diminished or hidden. Ultimately, you'll notice that her belly button is pointed straight towards camera. And in general, it's best to be able to turn that away from the body. A pose begins at the legs, and that's where the lower part of her body needs a restructuring of that foundation in order to give her more of a feminine S-curve, be able to turn her waist so we get to the thinnest part of it, be able to pull the arms away from the body, break the wrist in, then be able to work on softening the position of her head and so forth, in order to create something that has a bit more visual appeal. So here she is. She's a beautiful woman on her wedding day in a gorgeous dress. Our job now as wedding photographers is to be able to execute in a way that matches the attention to thought and detail that she's put into what she's doing. And she's going to rely on our expertise in order to help her get there, because she doesn't know how to do it herself. And so that's where using your voice to be able to guide her about how to stand, where to turn, how to look, how to emote will help her in that particular process. Thanks so much.
So hey, my name's Luke Edmondson, and I'm going to be giving you a little bit of feedback today. Looking at this image of the blonde lady that's wearing kind of a peach-colored shirt, white pants against a solid wall, and looks like the final score came in at about 71, which is suggesting that it requires improvement in technique. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not, as it's been put in here with the judges' note, saleable. Certainly, two of the judges indicated that they felt that it was definitely in that realm, as well as my own comments, which suggested that it had a good use of color and composition, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. The things that felt could be improved specifically was degree of difficulty and impact. Now, in the fashion category and in beauty, oftentimes this perhaps is an image more appropriate for a commercial category if it was something that was done in a commercial application for perhaps some sort of clothing company or things along those lines. In that sense, it is absolutely the type of work. I've done commercial work before. What the art directors see or what the designers want and so forth is not always the most, what I'd call high visual or most challenging. It's more lifestyle and what they're hoping for. And so from that sense, this could be completely saleable. I enjoyed the use of color in this, because one of the things that works well when we have less dimensionality within a particular frame, in this case you just simply have the background, there's no foreground, middle ground, background, so you're using a more limited color palette, and that's a smart thing to be able to do. Also enjoyed the composition, just that it wasn't bullseye composition but slightly offset, it could perhaps, I haven't gone in to actually map it out with a grid, but just to check that the dominant eye is actually on your point of interest compositionally, can help even tighten that up and give that arm to the right just a little bit more room. Now, overall, why is it going to be a tough entry inside a print competition? And that really comes down to it feels very much like it is in open shade, or at least in a less directional lighting that's going on there. Doesn't seem to have a significant amount of catch lights in the eye. There is obviously the shadow on the arm. The posing can be refined. There's foreshortening of the arm in terms of how her arm is placed and holding onto her ponytail in relation to the camera itself. The eyes in relation to the plane of the nose, the angle of the nose, there's a bit of a disconnect there. There certainly could be a little strength added to her chin as it's becoming compressed down there at the bottom, raising that up just a bit. Wispiness of hairs are things that could be refined. And most significantly, it's probably the styling. In the fashion category, styling is something that is going to have a significant emphasis, attention to detail on that. And just the bottom of her shirt, some of the wrinkles and so forth. Suggestion there might be to go ahead and use clothespins on the back to give her more of a waist and have her be more fitted within it. And then also just watching the way that the bottom of it comes across the white pants are things that could help improve this image to make it even better. Finally, I just want to touch base on the gold necklace. Gold necklace works. Could probably lay a little bit better across her neck as it's there. Part of that is due to the fact that her shoulder's been raised versus her shoulders being back, so that it's able to lay a little bit more flat, be more flattering. But the proportion of the earrings in relation to the gold jewelry doesn't seem to have enough weight, so that's something that could also be refined. Thank you so much.